Maybe that's not completely true, but in previous elections, people would buy that. And this year, I don't know if people are buying the scare tactics.
Well, I think in talking about the importance, the $23 million figure, and I know it's soared since last week when the numbers were released. $23 million is a staggering amount of money for a Senate race in Colorado. But as we all know, every state has 2 Senate races, so these are obviously very important. Colorado has the bang for the buck. 80% of the people live on the Front Range. So if you do an ad buy Colorado Springs, Denver, Fort Collins, you're pretty much taking care of 80% of the state, so it's really easy to go after them. But I think the reason why some of those ads aren't sticking, and I've certainly played a part in contributing material to some of those ads by doing some debunking or revealing, is instantaneously blogs, certainly the local news stations, even the media has really gone to great lengths to talk about whether or not the facts or the comments are true, false, misleading, whatever. And now, especially with the ability to counter the trackers who are going out after buck, who have gone after buck and tried to catch these gaffes, they're really just taking things out of context. Well, the video, the full video, the minute and a half to 5 minutes, are easily available on the internet, so you can go on there and say, hey, that's not what Ken Buck said. Here's the full context. And so it's easy to debunk some of those negative ads really quickly and put out the evidence for folks to take a look at.
I think another thing about negative ads this year, particularly this year, is they feel so off subject.
Yeah, they feel forced.
Right.
They feel absolutely contrived.
Why are you talking about some guy stealing my Social Security? I don't think that many people believe these things are plausible. Oh, he wants to put 23% sales tax on everything, of course, without telling you that that would take away the income tax. Those kind of things. He wants
to send American jobs off overseas because every politician wants to send American jobs overseas.
Those attacks are really prevalent in almost all of the competitive House races I've looked at, and Senate races as well, from Democrats who 6 months ago, Barack Obama and the Democrats nationally were promising us could run on health care, could run on all the positive things they've done. So that message, combined with the fact that they've gone a completely different direction and off the economy entirely, I think leads to people not being taken seriously.
You notice that there's one thing that they haven't advertised at all? I mean, the big thing they all stuck their careers out on, which was health care reform. Right. Not a single Democrat has an ad saying, damn right. I'm Betsy Markey, and I socialize medicine. Not one of them has done so.
Yeah, a good handful of them have ads talking about how they voted no.
Right.
That's a highlight of some of the Democratic ads.
Now, here in Colorado, Betsy Markey is toast. Now, you're way too young for this, but the old Star Trek, Bones and Kirk and McCoy would beam down on the planet with some guy in a red shirt, and it was Lieutenant McToast that would be the first guy into the cave and get zapped. She is Lieutenant McToast.
And first of all, when I had 3 channels, and we didn't have cable back in the day, my brothers, I used to sit on the couch and watch old school Star Trek every day after school.
Well, it's good that you've learned the basics, young lady. This is why you're a success today. Anyway, so we all can agree that Betsy Markey is Lieutenant McToast, but I never thought that, for instance, Salazar on the West Coast, on the West Slope, would look like he's going down, and even Ryan Fraser turns out to be. This is a competitive race in the 7th. I mean, I'm amazed.
Well, I think Markey certainly had a target on her back from the moment she was elected in 2008. Candidates were jumping in by December of that year, knowing that she would be a top target, given the nature of the 4th congressional district. It is traditionally a conservative Republican district. The new news out is that the DCCC is completely pulling out. They are not going to fulfill their ad buys or come up with that. So Markey is done. Yeah. Salazar, the Tipton race, which is a rematch of 2006. I think a lot of people thought that may be a little more competitive just given the nature of this year. But Tipton's run, I think, a good campaign. Salazar has done something what a lot of Democrats have done, have either coasted or tried to, play prevent defense and not make any significant errors. But certainly, the 7th congressional district with Ed Perlmutter, Ryan Fraser. There was a little slap incident last week that kind of made the rounds. It was kind of interesting. People are very interested in those races.
When you're Ed Perlmutter, you don't want that silly thing making national news for you. That's a gaffe, and that's something I've seen with a lot of House folks who did not expect to have races on their hands, is that they don't know how to handle this in
They haven't had a competitive race.
Right.
And they're incumbents. Incumbents get reelected. Right. All right. How big is this year going to be for Republicans? Give me. I mean, we keep hearing this. I keep hearing it's going to be 1994, and you were still in diapers in 1994, but it was a big year for us.
In diapers, watching Star Trek.
Watching Star Trek.
Right.
Is it going to be that big?
Yeah, I think it'll be at least that big. I mean, we're hearing up to 100 Democrat seats in play, which the warning on that, the warning signal on that was only 2 weeks before Election Day. You can't change much in that time. So I have a feeling that the House is going to be more surprising than we've expected, even sort of in the rosy projections. And you're going to see people going down that you didn't expect at all. I think the Senate may be a little underwhelming, is my guess. Some of those
Why do you
races
say that?
won't. My heart cannot put too much stock in places like California and Washington State, and so I feel like some of those may not end up playing out. Although I hope they do, and we've got some strong candidates in those races. I feel better about the House than about the Senate.
Buck's going to pull this one out. Would you agree?
I think so. Yeah.
And partly because of the year, but also partly because Michael Bennet is a dream candidate from my point of view. He comes across as what he is, an Ivy League elitist who's never run for even dog catcher before. So this, you're throwing him into the big game all at first, and he doesn't connect well with people.
A big game in a tough year.
In a tough year. Whereas Buck kind of reminds me a little bit of Wayne Allard. He's kind of, he's more rural. He's not as savvy, but people like him.
Well, I think right out of the gates, Senator Michael Bennet, when he was appointed, started off as Senator Who, really, for most people, because they're not attuned to what.
It also was a BBC show about a guy who was a Time Lord.
Yeah, they're not paying attention to the Denver public schools anywhere outside of Denver. So it was Senator Who, and basically since then on a number of issues, Employee Free Choice Act, card check, on global warming, cap and trade, on healthcare. He did take a little bit more position on that, but he's since we need to revise and go back and tweak it a little bit. He's never been a strong supporter really of anything, which is one of the reasons that prompted Andrew Romanoff to jump into the primary. So he started off as Senator Who. He turned into Senator sort of milquetoast, and it's really hard to connect to a lot of voters in a year like this when there is a lot of passion, a lot of very strong emotions. When most people can sum you up as like, Michael Bennet. I mean, he's just very blah to I think a lot of folks. So I think Ken, despite Ken's verbal gaffes, I think that Ken should be in the driver's seat. It's not going to be a big margin. I don't think people should be expecting that. But
let's back this up a little bit. Let's see if we can rise it up to the 30,000 level, 30,000 foot level. Why? What's going on this year that has this reaction? If you could boil down what's happened in D.C. and what has people so pissed off, what is it? Put it in an economy of words.
Right.
Why?
Well, Democrats will say it's only the economy, but let me add a data point. Having that healthcare process dragged out, not because Barack Obama wanted it dragged out, but because the people of America wanted it dragged out because they wanted to stop it, slowing that down and seeing in slow motion how all that comes together and having it done against their will opened up the true brokenness of Washington in a way that people have never seen before.
People reacted to the takeover of healthcare in a way that was refreshing to me. People got it on a visceral level. They might say, I know it's wrong. I can't quite put my finger on all the policy intricacies of it, but this is wrong. You had town hall meetings. You had tea parties. People were taking to the streets, fire and pitchforks. It was a wonderful thing. Finally, people were waking up. And it did. It drew out this problem for 9 months, and still it got passed.
But I think that seeing that happen from the guy who said he was going to fix this process, watching that happen in slow motion, seeing how awful it is, and understanding that they were doing it in this huge way with a problem that a lot of people didn't really feel like needed that much fixing, that's really what triggered this whole, there's nobody who can fix Washington but people who haven't been there before.
But he was hope. He was this is the city he was anointed. He came here to feed the masses loaves and fishes. I was there. I was in Invesco Field, which only took 5 hours to get through security, but I was there. It was a traveling salvation show.
Well, and people were engaged from that moment that opposed him. They were disappointed by the election results in 2008, even though they felt that there was nothing you could do to override the hope and change sentiment. But certainly, Mayor Katherine has a perfect read on folks getting involved in the process for maybe the first time in their lives, in a very visceral way, as you said. And you're seeing that reaction, especially in the House races. There's a reason why the House is almost a foregone conclusion in reaching maybe these title numbers. They're already feeling that backlash in their districts. Senate races play a little bit differently, I think, but people are certainly paying attention and getting involved in ways that they didn't before, and that's certainly encouraging to anyone who's not on the left side of the political aisle.
I think you're wrong. The left always wants more people involved. Don't you know